plus a godsend of an assistant in Allie, I was able to stay ahead. The 4 days hadn't really been much of a break, but for me, having been involved in a nasty murder case just prior to the holidays, it was an opportunity to clear my head of all that. As for Jonah, my cowboy/builder and brand new fiancé, he'd gifted his boys, the guys who worked for him in his building business, a few days' vacation due to them having volunteered to help with emergency repairs around town after unexpected storm damage, and that meant we could make it work. Despite the workload it would bring, I, as a newly engaged woman and a hopeless, gushy romantic, had been excited that our trip would segue into my first proper Valentine's Day celebrations. For me, it was perfect, but now, looking at the faces surrounding us, I sensed perfect drifting away. Time out. Jonah's voice broke through the bustle, and everybody immediately stilled. I'm guessing we didn't win the lottery while we were away, but something else did happen, right? And Frank, I'm also figuring you haven't turned up here for cheesecake. He eyed the white chocolate and raspberry pie they'd obviously removed from my freezer earlier. Well, not just the cheesecake. So let's just spit it out. I braced myself as Frank's mouth scrunched into its habitual kissy pose. It always signaled he was thinking, and I wished he'd think faster. Finally, that mouth opened. They found a body. What? My eyes swung to Fiona, who'd hijacked his speech. A murdered body. They slid to Midge. In Jonah's backyard. Back to Fiona. In unison, Jonah and I both swung back to Frank, who was shaking his head at the other two women in the room. Anything else you'd like to add? Both clamped their lips, but neither looked contrite. In other circumstances, I might have giggled at the expressions on the faces of my two best friends, but this certainly wasn't a giggling moment. In fact, my head was still trying to comprehend. One look at Jonah told me he was just as confused. Whoa, we need to back up here. What? How? Why? Our words hit the air at the same time, the fact that neither of us was very eloquent being testimony to how this had shaken us. Frank cocked an eyebrow. Ladies, I assume you won't mind if I take over now? Not waiting for a reply, the sheriff nodded slightly in my direction. In reply to you, Rosie, he began, addressing my garbled queries. The what, I think you already know. The why is something we all want to know. And the how? Well, in fact, I was going to ask Clay to fill you in on that, seeing as how he's the one who found the body when he went to check on those mamas and their calves in Jonah's house corral. Without conscious thought, my hand went to my mouth, and my eyes flashed straight to Jonah's dad. Clay, the town dentist, who also happened to be the mayor, was in his early 60s, and with his height, broad shoulders, and shock of thick white hair, had always reminded me of Howard Keel in his older years. My gran and her cronies had been great Keel fans, a 50s film and Broadway star who charmed them from the silver screen with his looks and deep, rumbling voice. Jonah was a cookie-cutter image of his dad, right down to the voice. But as strong as they both were, finding a dead body can be a huge thing to deal with. I knew firsthand how that felt, and my heart went out to him. He cleared his throat. Tiny and I went out to your farm yesterday, son, to do as Frank just said. It had rained a bit earlier in the day and the wind had come up, so I decided to check around, make sure everything was secure. He leaned across to pat the now snoozing dog. It was Tiny here who found the body. She ran ahead, around to the paved patio area just off your deck at the back. I could see some of the paving stones were rough, not lying flat. I'd never noticed that before. Something had grabbed...